Hello, everyone. I'm going to talk to you guys today about why Adventists keep the Seventh Day Sabbath. And just to let you understand that this is not it's not about legalism or anything like that. Um, this completely comes from the Scriptures. So let's get started. Okay, let's take a look at the fourth commandment. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shall you labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your cattle, nor the stranger that is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Now, let's just take a look at this for a little bit. God says, remember to keep the Sabbath day holy, which is not Sunday, it's Saturday. You can even just look on your calendar, and you'll see that the seventh day, that the day starts, the week starts Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and ends on Saturday. The first day of the week is Sunday. That Sunday is not the seventh day. So God said to make the seventh day holy, and what you see a little later on in verse 11, it says, "In 6 days the Lord made the world, and He rested on the seventh day." So God Himself kept the Sabbath, and it says, "Therefore He made the Sabbath day holy." Now, this was before there were any Jews. This was at the time of creation, the time of Adam and Eve. So, this is something that God Himself did. He gave us an example to follow because He kept the Sabbath Himself. So let's continue. And He, Jesus, said to them, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Now notice here that He did not say the Sabbath was made for the Jews. The Sabbath was made for man, meaning mankind. So it's not just for the Jews. Jesus could have easily said the Sabbath was made for the Jews, but He didn't say that. He said Sabbath was made for man. And if you look back in Exodus and Genesis, that's the way it is. The Sabbath was created at the beginning when God made the earth and made man. Now, did the early Christians worship on the Sabbath? Well, let's see. And when the Jews were gone out of the synagogue, the Gentiles besought that these words might be preached to them the next Sabbath. So the Gentiles were going to the synagogue on Sabbath. Again, in Acts, and he reasoned in the synagogue every Sabbath and persuaded the Jews and the Greeks. So again, you see that the early Christians were also keeping the Sabbath. That's when they were going to worship. They were going to worship at the synagogue on the Sabbath. Were God's laws and commandments unknown before given to the Jews? See, a lot of people will make that argument. They will say, well, this stuff was only given to the Jews. It wasn't for anybody else. Well, let's take a look at that. And I will multiply thy seed as the stars of heaven, and will give unto your seed all these lands. And in your seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. God is saying Abraham kept his commandments, his statutes, and his laws. So the laws that the Jews were following, they were around before the Jews. Remember, the Jews were in Egypt for over 400 years, and when they came out, they had to be retaught these things. They were in Egypt. They had lost these teachings. Let's take a look again. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High. Now, let's take a look at this. I'll go ahead and finish reading this. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abraham by God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And Abram gave him a tenth of everything. Now, there's a couple things in these two verses, actually 3 verses. You see that God had a priest. Now, we're talking Abram here, even before God changed his name to Abraham. God had a priest. There was a priesthood here. And it says clearly, he's a priest of the God Most High. And then we also see that Abram gave him a tenth of everything. So Abram knew to pay his tithe. Well, didn't God give those things to the Jews? The priesthood and the paying of the tithe, the tenth. If that was just something that God introduced to the Jews, which is just a brand new thing, how come we have a priest of God Most High long before there were any Jews, and Abram knows to give him a tenth? Well, earlier on we saw that God said Abraham obeyed his commandments, his statutes, and his laws. So these things were there before there were any Jews. I mean, it's pretty clear. Let's see in Psalms here. The Lord has sworn, I will not change his mind. You are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. And so you see here again, there was a priestly order in the line of Melchizedek. This is before there were Levites. There were no Levites. There was no Levitical priesthood. Before that, God had a way for people to worship him. And it's basically the same way. God didn't change anything. I mean, the path to salvation did not change when the Jews came along. So anyway, were the 10 Commandments abolished at the crucifixion? That's another argument that people will make. They will say, the 10 Commandments, they were abolished at the crucifixion. We don't need to worry about that anymore. Okay? Now, it is true that when Christ died on the cross, all the laws concerning the sacrificial ceremonies, the sacrificial system, were done away with because, Christ was our sacrifice. And so, when they would sacrifice lambs and oxen and goats and things like that, it was all pointing to Jesus. Once Jesus made his sacrifice, those things were no longer necessary. But the 10 Commandments, those are moral laws. Honor thy mother and father, don't steal, don't kill. These are the moral laws. Now look what is said here in 1 John. Whoever commits sin transgresses also the law. For sin is the transgression of the law. So what is sin? Sin is the transgression of the law. Okay? Then in Romans, for before the law, sin was in the world, but sin was not attributed when there was no law. So without law, sin is not attributed, because the definition of sin, as John says, is the transgression of the law. But if you don't have a law, then you don't have sin. Well, if sin has been done away with, if the law has been done away with, then there's no more sin. You can do whatever you want. Sin does not exist. And I don't think anybody believes that, because there are other verses in the Bible where we are warned not to sin, and Paul says things like, people who are adulterers and people who steal and do all sorts of evil things will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. I'm kind of paraphrasing that verse there, but we know that we cannot just do whatever we want and expect that we'll be part of the kingdom of heaven. We can't continue just sinning. In fact, when Jesus saved the woman from being stoned, he said to her, "Go and sin no more." So yes, he saves us from sin, but he doesn't want us to just continue to sin, because then think about it, salvation would be a license to sin. So that's not what this is all about. Now, are we then saved by works? Is this a works thing when it comes to the Sabbath? Okay, we're going to keep the Sabbath now, works are going to save us? That's not what this is about, and I went ahead and just put this in here, even though this is not directly a Sabbath topic, but this is not about works. And we can see right here, for by works of the law no human being will be justified in his sight, since through the law comes the knowledge of sin. Okay? But you see in James, but some will say, I have faith. Some say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. And so, our works are just evidence of our faith. Faith is what saves us. But if we truly believe, we're going to have works that bear witness to that. So, did Paul teach we no longer have to keep the Sabbath? Okay, this is another thing right here you see in Colossians 2:16. Therefore, let no one pass judgment on you in questions of food and drink, or with regard to any festival or new moon or Sabbath. And what we're going to see here, we're going to take a look at that, and we're gonna dig into this a little bit more. Okay, if we go further down, it says, if with Christ you died to the elemental spirits of the world, why is it if you were still alive in the world, do you submit to regulations, do not handle, do not taste, do not touch, referring to things that all perish as they are used according to human precepts and teachings? These have indeed an appearance of wisdom, and promoting self-made religion and asceticism and severity of the body, but they are of no value in stopping the indulgence of the flesh. Now, this is a little bit complicated. I'm going to try to explain this to you. What Paul is talking about here is he's responding. This is a response. This is not Paul just making a blanket statement saying that you don't have to keep the Sabbath. He's responding to something, and it says Paul is responding to criticism of the Colossians for feasting instead of fasting on the days listed. The teaching was that fasting and other harsh treatment of their bodies was necessary to combat the power and influence of elemental or evil spirits. And you see that right in there. I mean, why's Paul bringing up evil spirits? Why would he bring that up? You know. So let's continue here. Um, it was commonly believed at the time that since demons did not have physical bodies, they would possess people in order to experience the pleasures of food, wine, sex, etc. The restriction of certain foods and other austere practices is the primary issue rather than days. Is in the form, is seen in the form, is seen from the fact that days is not mentioned again, but the discussion on austere practices continues. So you see that this was not actually about days. This was about the fact that, okay, you're doing these certain things on the days listed to try to combat what's going on. How do I say this? It's this sort of superstition that was going on at the time. Let's see here. Let me finish. But the discussion on austere practices continues because the teaching involved food and specific days to gain victory over evil spirits instead of Christ. Paul had to clarify the relationship that food and days had with Christ. So the whole thing is that these people were trying to, do certain things on certain days so that they could combat the power of evil spirits. And, Paul is basically saying, that's not going to help you. He's just talking about the fact that you have these spirits that you are trying to combat, and this is not the way to do it. You do it through Christ. You don't do it through these practices, and that's what this actually means. So if somebody says to you, Paul says that you don't have to keep the Sabbath, that's not really what he's saying, and you have to read the full passage, and you have to really kind of dig deep on this to understand what this is all about. On saying that he's trying to say that we don't keep the Sabbath, that is taken out of context. That's not the context of what he's talking about. Can Christians substitute the seventh day Sabbath with Sunday? Well, let's see. And he, meaning Jesus, said to them, well did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites, as it is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrine the commandments of men. You leave the commandment of God and hold to the tradition of men. Now, let me ask you this. Keeping Sunday, that's not a commandment of God. You can look everywhere in the Bible. There's nowhere in the Bible where we are commanded to keep Sunday holy. The only day that we are commanded to keep holy is the Sabbath. So we are leaving the commandment of God and holding to the tradition of men. Now, some of you will say, oh, I don't know about that. Well, let's take a look. Who changed the seventh day Sabbath to Sunday? Well, the Convert's Catechism of Catholic Doctrine. And it's the third edition, page 50, question. Which is the Sabbath day? Answer, Saturday is the Sabbath day. Question, why do we observe Sunday instead of Saturday? Answer, we observe Sunday instead of Saturday because the Catholic Church in the Council of Laodicea, A.D. 363, transferred the solemnity from Saturday to Sunday. So, you see, this is a commandment, this is a tradition. This is a tradition of man that has trumped the commandment of God. And here is an actual copy of the actual of page 50. So it's not just something I wrote up. I mean, this is real. This is something that the Catholic Church did back in A.D. 336. I mean, did I put 363 on the other one? Yeah, okay, it's 336. That was a little typo on my part. But yeah, it's A.D. 363, and we can see that this is what the Catholic Church did. So this is not a commandment of God. There is nothing about this that is biblical. The only biblical day for us to worship is on the seventh day, which is the Sabbath. Did Protestants know the Catholic Church changed the Sabbath? Well, let's look at the Augsburg Confession. Let's see. They, meaning the Catholic Church, referred to the Sabbath day as having been changed into the Lord's Day, contrary to the Decalogue. If you don't know what the Decalogue is, that means the Ten Commandments. As it seems, neither is there any example thereof. They make more than concerning the changing of the Sabbath day. Great, say they, is the power of the Church, since it has dispensed with one of the Ten Commandments. So the Protestants during the time of the Reformation knew this. Now they went along with it, but they knew it. They knew what the Catholic Church had done. It's written right there in the Augsburg Confession. Okay. Now, didn't early believers worship only on Sunday? Well, let's look at the Synod of Laodicea, Canon 29, 4th century. This is, the 4th century is when it happened, according to the Catholic Church. Christians must not Judaize by resting on the Sabbath. Now, why would they say Christians must not Judaize by resting on the Sabbath if they were keeping Sunday all the time? Which is what a lot of people say. Oh, yes, after Jesus was resurrected, they started keeping Sunday. Well, apparently not, because the Catholic Church was telling people not to rest on the Sabbath, but must work on that day rather honoring the Lord's Day, and if they can, resting then as Christians. But if any should be found to be Judaizers, let them be anathema from Christ. Hear the Father's order that no one of the faithful shall stop work on the Sabbath, as do the Jews, but that they should honor the Lord's day on account of the Lord's resurrection, and that on that day they should abstain from manual labor and go to church. So, I mean, in the Council of Laodicea, you can see right there that, they're telling everyone that do not rest on the Sabbath day. Do not keep the Sabbath. Why are they saying that? Because people were keeping the Sabbath. Okay, what does Jesus say about Laodicea? Now, granted, what Jesus says here about Laodicea is not only about the church of Laodicea, but it's also prophetic. And so it's talking about the last age of the church too. So because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. For you say, I am rich, I have prophesied, I have prospered, and I need nothing, not realizing that you are wretched, pitiable, poor, blind, and naked. So here we have a doctrine coming out of Laodicea, the Council of Laodicea. And it's just kind of ironic that in Revelation, when Jesus talks about Laodicea, what does he say? You are wretched, pitiable, poor, blind, and naked. You're lukewarm. I'm going to spit you out of my mouth. Think about that. This is how Jesus characterized Laodicea. And Laodicea, it had a double meaning. It was the church of Laodicea and also the final church at the end of time, the condition of Christianity at the end of time. So it had a double meaning, but when you look at this, here is doctrine coming out of the Council of Laodicea saying we're going to change God's commandment and don't follow what God says, follow what we say, and is that where you want to be getting your doctrine from, Laodicea? Jesus had nothing good to say about Laodicea. So me personally, I'm going to stick with what God says. I'm not going to base my doctrine on what my beliefs, what came out of Laodicea. Should Christians also keep the rest of the Jewish laws? Well, let's take a look. But when I saw that they, meaning the Jews, walk not uprightly according to the truth of the gospel, I said unto Peter before them all, if you being a Jew live after the manner of Gentiles, and not as do the Jews, why compel the Gentiles to live as the Jews do? And so the answer to that question is no, we do not follow all the Jewish ceremonial laws. And here's the answer to that in Galatians. But before faith came, we were kept in ward under the law, shut up unto the faith which should afterwards be revealed. Revealed meaning Jesus. So that the law is become our tutor to bring us unto Christ, that we might be justified by faith. But now faith that is come, we are no longer under a tutor. So what he's saying here is that now that we have Jesus, we don't need all these laws anymore, all the ceremonial laws. Basically, all the laws that had to do with, sacrifices and all the other things that the Jews were doing. They had to build a temple, they had to have priests and all these things. These all pointed to Jesus. And Jesus is now our high priest, as it says in Hebrews. So that's his job now. So we don't have the sacrificial system. We don't have the priesthood anymore. Any of those things. So all of those ceremonial types of laws and things, we don't follow those anymore because Jesus fulfilled that. And in fact, he's fulfilling it right now in heaven. He's our high priest. He's offering his blood for our sins and that type of thing. So we don't follow all those Jewish laws. But the Ten Commandments are different. The Ten Commandments are not ceremonial. They're not. These are just the moral laws that God has given us to not only worship him, but to also, strengthen our relationships with one another. If you look at the Ten Commandments, the first four deal with the relationship we have with God, and the other 6 deal with the relationship that we have with other people. Honor your mother and father, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery, and all the rest. So anyway, will we keep the Sabbath when God creates a new earth? Well, let's take a look at that. For as the new heaven and the new earth, which I will make, will be forever before me, says the Lord, so will your seed and your name be forever. And it will be that from new moon to new moon, and from Sabbath to Sabbath, all flesh will come and give worship before me, says the Lord, from Sabbath to Sabbath. Okay. I think that needs any explanation. Now, I found this on Chuck Missler's website, and I don't know if, a lot of you may not know who Chuck Missler is. He's not an Adventist. Okay? He's not a Seventh Day Adventist. He's just he's a preacher. Well, when I say a preacher, maybe I should say a Christian speaker. He's not a pastor, but he, I've seen him on TBN. He has videos on YouTube. And he speaks at a lot of churches and stuff like that. And he's, if you're a Christian, a lot of people know who he is. He's written a lot of books and have videotapes and audio tapes and things of that nature. But this is what he said. Man and I, personally, have resolved, in the absence of travel or other logistic or scheduling constraints, to remember the Sabbath day by adopting the following procedure. On Friday sundown to Saturday sundown, we set aside the time for study meditation, and as a departure from our normal routines, we have resolved to do whatever we do deliberately and together. There are no other rules. And so you see that, here's someone who's not an Adventist and who has taken the time to study this topic, keeps the Sabbath. And if you go to his website, there's more information on that. He actually has a pretty long, I don't know what I'd call it, a statement, or a statement isn't the right word for it. It's quite lengthy, but we'll call it a very lengthy explanation as to why he keeps the Sabbath. And actually, until you get to the end, you're not really sure which side he's on, because he goes back and forth, with the argument, and then finally at the end you see where he ends up. But anyway, we don't make it a burden. We simply attempt to avail ourselves of his intended blessing. We attempt in an informal but deliberate way to study and reflect on his word and find ways to praise him. And this is just telling you where you can find the article. And at the bottom you see there is the website address, and it was from the May 2000 Personal Update News Journal. And so that is it. This is why Adventists keep the Sabbath. This is why I keep the Sabbath. And I hope that this has answered some questions. Anyway, here you have it, and I hope this has been helpful to whoever's been watching. Thank you very much.